Ladies and gentlemen, Rebel Scum, and loyal to the Empire, this is Sith Talk, the show that talks all things Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV, Star Wars books, although not of lately, and just plenty of Star Wars topics. I'm your host, Zach Chrisman, aka the Lord of Lore, and joining me, as always, is Brandon. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Excited to be back doing Sith talk. We got to hang out in person for a little while a couple weeks ago, and haven't had a chance to sit down and record in a minute. So it's going to be a lot of fun to be able to be back chatting with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We actually, like, kind of, we were texting back and forth, and this one is not a reactionary movie topic, nothing big about directors. This is actually a philosophy episode.
Super pumped
I
about that.
yeah, so I want to kind of, before we get into it, this is a philosophy episode. In this episode I plan on talking about like how Star Wars's philosophy affects our world philosophy, and I just guess I'm saying that to open up, like, in this conversation, maybe have a conversation with yourself about how you feel about these topics. Because I'll also be affirming some things that I feel, but also a lot of other things. So I won't bury the lead here. We were talking the other day, and I text you, and you text me and you said, "Do you have a topic about for Sith Talk?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to talk about the the scene with Yoda and Anakin in the meditation chamber." So for
Hmm.
those who don't haven't been following me, and for maybe some who have and following the show, I have talked a lot over all of my entire podcasting career about this meditation scene between Anakin and Yoda, and how I've always said that it was Yoda's mistake for not reading the room with Anakin and not giving him real world advice when Anakin needed it most. He just kind of quoted scripture at Anakin. And that was a big understanding with that scene for me. And that when Anakin heard that scripture and not the human spirituality, more so the Jedi code, that was when Anakin had pretty much said, and in my eyes, Hayden does perfectly well at showing in his own eyes, great, I can no longer, these people are no longer safe to talk to, essentially. Like, I can't really actually tell them, because you can tell in that scene, to kind of give you a picture of that scene and why it's so powerful to me. This is Anakin's, like, he's really, and I didn't need the book for this, but like, he's really trying to go back and forth between, or at least I assume, telling the Jedi about the secret with Padme in order to really kind of help fix her situation. He's wanting to kind of say everything but say it, you know, at this
Yeah,
point. But he wants to say it, and everybody knows, or like I feel like the audience knows that like he does want to say it. But
for
because
sure.
Yoda, like, had Yoda been like, dude, yeah, it really sucks. Like, let me tell you about Jedi Master Blank and how, like, you've never fucking heard of them, but, like, they were my friend, and, like, this is where I learned blank. Like, if he would have done that, Anakin would have been, like, probably done something along the lines of, like, totally fessed up and said, like, how do I let that go when it's your wife? You know, and maybe
Yeah,
not, but, like, essentially, he was opening it up, and Yoda shot that shit right down.
yeah,
What is your.
really hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting now, like with the High Republic, that you point out the idea of like she, or excuse me, Yoda could have said like I knew this person, because you have the Elzar and Avar situation that everybody in the Order was aware of. It wasn't a secret, so Yoda knew about that, right? They weren't hiding it, and those two gave their lives for the galaxy, gave their lives for the greater good. They did the ultimate act a Jedi can do in sacrificing themselves in peace and meditation. And then you have this situation with Anakin where, I mean, Yoda even asks, like, when Anakin is telling him about the visions, he says, someone you know. And Yoda or Luke said, or I'm getting them all mixed up now. Anakin says yes. And that was an in for Yoda to say, tell me more. Tell me about this person. Tell me why they matter to you, right? Tell me what you're feeling in your body right now. What is, like he could have gone deeper with Anakin. And instead, he just kind of says, like, you must learn to let go of everything you fear to lose, which he is not wrong. The problem is, like, Yoda is not wrong there in his words. He's wrong in how he approached the situation. Like you said, he didn't read the room, right? It's kind of like Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones really misread things when he told Anakin, dreams pass in time. Because for Anakin, he misunderstands what Anakin is trying to tell him there. He's trying to tell him that he's in pain. He's trying to reach out. And Anakin's greatest flaw is that he's not able to open up to others the way that he needs to. He's not able to be vulnerable because he gets so caught in his success and his ego that it takes away his ability to be vulnerable. He has to be seen as the hero with no fear. And the Jedi Order's greatest weakness at that point was the inability to welcome vulnerability. So you have these two problems that just fit together so perfectly, that lead to the downfall of the Jedi Order, because the left hand was not able to talk to the right hand. Anakin and Yoda were speaking in platitudes instead of speaking in humanity, and when that humanity got lost, so did Anakin.
Here's the thing, and here's what I've learned, and you tell me if this is what I'm getting from this again, or at least right now. Anakin didn't listen. What do you know about Anakin? He's always quick. He's always quick
Mm-hmm.
to solve the problem, and he's always looking for his own answers for things. Even though he depends on other people for answers, he's asking people, but this is why, and this is my takeaway or my add on, whether it's like a new addition or update to my feelings, but this is what I've added to it. I've been doing a lot of listening about fear, just in general, not because
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of fear, but I go down threads and I like psychology, and I've been going down that thread. And going down that thread, it instantly hooked me. It's like, but Yoda gave Anakin everything he did need. He
Did
did
he?
though, and yes, yes, because Anakin's mistake, and you really kind of realize this, like later, like look at everything, and it might take a second to sit in, but like Anakin's biggest problem is control and not letting go of control of a situation. And if he would have let go of control of the situation, it would not have gotten worse. There would have been another way. But in fear, in acting in fear, and when you act in fear, you're attempting to control a situation. You really are.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
He
I
made that
agree with you
mistake.
there.
He made that mistake because he was looking for he was even trying to control the way that played out because he
See,
was looking for certain things already, and it goes 50-50. You can still, and I'm not arguing against your point, our point, the original. I'm just saying on top of adjacent, fear is bigger than people think. We usually look at like fear is the step because like it scares you, but like what really is like fear? What is fear? Fear is your like assessment of a future and your attempt to control it.
yeah,
That's the way I see it.
I don't disagree with you. I think where I take issue is you saying that Yoda gave him everything he needed. He gave him the facts that he needed, but he didn't give him everything he needed. What Anakin needed right there was empathy. What Anakin needed right there was
But he asked Yoda,
understanding. With right, the greatest Jedi Master in the galaxy, apparently at that
and
point,
and
right?
you gotta
Like
take him for his word, like for who he is. Like you have to,
right,
like.
right, and that's the problem is the Jedi could not give Anakin what he needed at that point, right?
Hmm.
And Anakin was not able to receive what the Jedi were able to give. That's why I was saying, the two were the perfect mismatch for each other for Palpatine to manipulate. And when you bring fear into the equation, it magnifies things, right? Because the Jedi are afraid to lose their power, Anakin's afraid to lose his power, and it becomes this power struggle, right? Which fear usually is. Like you said, fear is about losing control. We fear most losing control over our situation. What is control? Control is an expression of power. What do we know about power? Everybody who gains power fears to lose it. Palpatine says that, and it's the one thing he says that's actually true. You know
But
what I mean?
Yeah, but the Jedi Code doesn't, or I mean the Jedi Code doesn't really, I mean, like fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, but like that is, I don't think it's a good enough reason for why, like it's the right word for that, but it's also like fear for a lot of people in these stories is good people attempting to control too much of their situation and it essentially eating at them, driving them to do things they wouldn't normally do. And
For
yes, it is
sure.
in some senses due to their lack of being connected to other people or people's lack of being connected to them. But fear is really more about you attempting to control. And I think that is a big piece in Star Wars, um, because I think it reflects the mistake that Anakin made. I guess I've never looked at how his attempt at controlling was the fear. He controls
Mm-hmm.
everything. He wants to control everything, and it comes from a good spot until it doesn't. Because
See, yeah, that's
until it doesn't,
until it doesn't is the key phrase there. Like, um, the interesting thing with Anakin is that I, to some extent, he fears failure, but to a greater extent, he fears not being successful, and there
it's
is a
also
difference
ego.
between those two things, right? Um, Fearing failure is feeling inadequacy, and one thing that Anakin never feels is inadequate. You know, like this is the hero with no fear. This is the kid raised by Shmi Skywalker who was raised with a level of self-worth even though he was an enslaved person. This is the kid that Qui-Gon Jinn believed in. This is again the hero with no fear. He was the chosen one. So he didn't have this I'm inadequate really about him. Maybe moments here and there. There's some stuff in the Anakin and Obi-Wan comic where he kind of wants to leave the Jedi because he doesn't really feel like he fits in. So sure, you're gonna have your teenage moments like that, but it's not a
Underrated
persistent
comic,
thing.
by the way.
Oh, so good.
Read it on a
Um,
cruise.
but
Really good time to read the comic.
right, but Anakin's biggest issue is that he fears not being successful. And that is what he fears with the Padme situation, is that he's not going to be able to successfully save her the way he did not successfully save his mother. And success really exposes people a lot. And I think in the case of the Jedi and the Anakin situation, success kind of exposed both of them. The more success the Jedi Order got, the more power, the more prominence it got, the less rooted in what its original purpose was, or at least what we understand its original purpose as being, it became. And the more successful Anakin became, the less rooted in the traits that his mother raised him to have, the less that those stayed with him. You know, he lost that empathy, he lost that sense of worth. Everything became attached to other people. And that's the thing about fear is a form of attachment, right? And so again, it goes back to this idea that the Jedi were not wrong in what they did or in what they said. They were wrong in how they expressed it. And you can look at the High Republic as a great example of how it could have gone differently. You know, if like they did with Elzar and Avar, they had created a space where Anakin was able to be his own kind of Jedi, you know, where Wayseekers and different forms of Jedi still existed, things would have gone way differently for Anakin. But the Jedi feared losing their power, which is again, like you said, a matter of control.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
at
really
the
what's
end,
being expressed in that scene, you know? Like in that scene that we were talking about, like that is them, you know, Yoda's only willing to go so far and gives platitudes because that's all that's left of the Jedi Order. And Anakin's not willing to go far enough to be vulnerable because he's been told that's not okay for 2 decades.
For sure. For sure. But again, I guess I guess my point isn't as big as I thought it was,
No, I think it's huge.
but for me it just feels like I think when it comes to my own life, I've been having a better time kind of not assessing everything all the time when it comes to, you get so caught up in certain things in life, um that you're like when you're stressed out, your fears really can eat you. And
For
I'm not
sure.
saying I wasn't really, I haven't been to a point like that recently, but I remember it all too well because I've been there many times. And so a part of my journey is thinking about stuff like that and listening to other podcasts about things like that. And I guess I just realized that like the road to hell and fear, I've never really quite really understood fear and how much control it can give you and how much it can continue taking you down the plot or the thread so far that you don't even recognize who you are. Again, I'm not saying about anything recently for me, but like I think we've all been there, caught up in whatever it is. And for some it's worse things than others, and for some it's like I got caught up in driving and cussed somebody out, but like I mean, like, definitely been there more times than I can count. Totally willing to admit that, like, sometimes there's people who drive that, like, fucking piss me off, and I get really caught up in that. And that's not necessarily fear, but it's like fear and the loopholes you can take your brain down, especially when your wife is going to die. That fear and wanting to control it, there's more weight in the words trying to control your fear. And I think it has a play in our everyday lives. And when we let go of constantly racking our brain, because, like, let's face it, like, it's not great times for a lot of people right now. It
For
sucks. And
sure.
so I,
Yeah.
that weighs on me. And like, what are your answers for people who are going through rough times? Like, when you look at a lot of things, it shows up that like your confidence and your energy and the way you outlook and inspiring people to think better and to communicate better and to be more communal and to show this love and to give everything that you can to people, to be that person, that inspiration to help times like these. You have to let go of your own fears because they do cripple you and they take up a lot of brain space when you are completely caught in your fears, and they don't allow you to slow things down and truly assess your actual life. And yes, the great like problem with the Jedi's point is they didn't know how to catch that and say, "Hey, bro, do you need to talk?" Because like we do,
Yeah.
like we know how to catch that. And you live in fucking Texas, and I can tell. Like if I need to
Well,
reach out to you, like,
yeah.
and you've been able to reach out to me in the past, and we text most of the time, and they couldn't even do that. But at the
Well,
same
and
time,
the Jedi needed a therapy department. Like they needed that's what they needed. They needed therapists. Um
Avar's
because
song is just in the background, just
yeah, right? Just playing.
Avar's slick jazz.
Because here's the thing. Yoda again, like what he says is rarely wrong. It's how he goes about conducting himself that becomes the problem. And he's not wrong when he tells Anakin, well, he's not fully wrong when he tells Anakin that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. I would actually switch that a little bit and say fear can lead to anger, anger can lead to hate, hate can lead to suffering, unless we take the time to acknowledge that fear. And I go back to what Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan at the beginning of the Phantom Menace when he was talking, and Obi-Wan was saying, he senses something elsewhere, elusive. And what does Qui Gon tell him? Don't center on your anxieties. Keep your focus here and now where it belongs. He's not just saying like, dude, we got this big mission. Like you gotta, keep your head in the game. He's telling him the way that you quell your anxieties is by staying in the present, right? Is by being there in the moment. Is by embracing the world around you. And fear is always future focused, right? Like fear cannot be past focused. That's the thing. Because if fear was past focused, that's called trauma. That's not fear. You know, fear is anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. And like Yoda said, always in motion is the future, right? We cannot control the future. And the difference between when when Yoda is training Anakin, like in a moment like the one that you brought up in the meditation scene, and when Yoda is training Luke, is that Yoda actually is living out the things that he's telling Luke to do. We see it actively in The Empire Strikes Back, right? We see him, for example, he tells Luke when Luke asks him, how will I tell the good side from the bad? He says, "You'll know when you're calm, at peace, passive." Same thing Qui-Gon said, don't center any anxieties. Keep your focus here and now where it belongs. We see Yoda actually living that out, in the X-Wing scene, for example. He's being calm, at peace, passive. He's not angry at Luke when Luke seems to not believe in himself. He doesn't try to guide Luke in any particular direction when he goes into the tree cave, the magic tree. Like all of that stuff, we see a different Yoda there because Yoda learned from Anakin the hard way that when you try to uh, push the fear away instead of allowing it to flow through you, things become a problem. And I think that is really the biggest issue that centers around all of this is we think that fear and anxiety is something that we have to get rid of, right? It scares us. We need to get rid of the anxiety, right? When in reality, we have to learn to sit with it. So like something happened today and I was talking with my girlfriend and I said, "Hey, I need you to know like this is making me feel anxiety." It was nothing bad, it was nothing major, but I just wanted to be able to express like I feel anxiety in this moment. And I said, "It's not your job to cure that anxiety or anything. I just need you to know I feel anxiety right now." And it was just acknowledging that helped it to flow through and go away and helped lessen that anxiety because you're not centering on it by acknowledging it. And that is where I think Yoda and Anakin had their miscommunication. Is Yoda is in a way trying to tell Anakin, acknowledge your fear and then let it go, which is let it flow through you. But what Anakin's able to hear in that moment is push your feelings down, right? And
So could
Yoda's
that
go ahead.
no keep going. No,
I was just
finish.
gonna I was just gonna close and saying like Yoda's not able to see that. Yoda's not able to see, going back to what you said earlier, he's not able to see what Anakin needs. And that's where the problem really becomes an issue.
For sure. And to stack that with you, Yoda does attempt to let him do that. So at the end of the day, Luke Skywalker. So I'll finish. I'll give you the context, but like Luke Skywalker at the end of the day is an improvement to the Skywalker line, but like just as like Luke, he's just not an entire fix to the problem, which I
Yeah.
think he points out in the Last Jedi, and this kind of connects your adds to your argument, kind of adds to mine. Is like Luke does address his fears to Yoda
Mm-hmm.
when he leaves or leaves, but if I don't go they'll die. I forget the exact quote, but if I
Yeah.
don't go they'll die.
That's
and and
literally the exact quote.
and yeah, okay. And Yoda, well, you know me, I always gotta, it's always more than it is, but Yoda, he does give him good advice,
For sure.
but Luke still, at the end of the day, he is a hero for doing this. And as a kid I didn't really understand, like, he does have to go, but now I understand why. And the why for me is much bigger now than it was last week, or now that we're having this episode. And the why is like, he even Luke though still could not ever really let go of his fears. And he still always tried to control the situations,
For sure.
even by removing himself from the entire galaxy did he control a literal situation.
Well,
Um,
look at what
Out
he
of his
tells
fear.
Rey in Rise of Skywalker. He literally says, "I was wrong. I was afraid." Right? And then he tells her, confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi, right? That is what a Jedi is supposed to do. And it manifests differently in everybody, right? And the Jedi Order of the prequels, the Yoda's Jedi Order, did not fail because their platitudes were wrong. It did not fail because they had the wrong, for lack of a better term, theology or anything like that. It failed because they stopped confronting fear, right? And Luke's journey is one of continually confronting fear. That's what happens in The Empire Strikes Back, and he fails. That's what happens in Return of the Jedi, and he succeeds. But the lesson of the sequels is that confronting fear, that destiny is a continual thing. And that's the beauty of The Last Jedi, is that, yes, Luke confronted fear and had hope in that moment in the second Death Star. But that doesn't just stick around just because you made it happen once. It is a continual effort, because what do we see throughout the stories, right? Is that everybody's story, there's fear within it. Whether you look at somebody like Rey, somebody like Luke, somebody like Anakin, look at inarguably, and I say inarguably, literally the best of the Skywalker line, which is Leia. She still has fear, right? And
But she
she's the most
doesn't control it.
right. She's the most, because she has so much hope, because she knows that she's not going to be able to be the leader and the example that she needs to be, that she's not going to be able to be the balanced character person that she needs to be and have the balanced character within herself if she gets stuck in that fear. And so Luke's journey is not one about him being perfect. It's about it's a story of making mistakes, because see, Luke, what people forget about the second Death Star, and this, with it being my favorite moment in all of cinema, it bothers the hell out of me. They forget that when he threw his lightsaber away, it wasn't all cotton candy and fucking rainbows. He got electrocuted and nearly died, right? He got in, like, he still was having to face down fear. And then Anakin had to confront his own fear in order to restore that hope. So Luke didn't win some great victory by throwing away his lightsaber. He just said, I, in this moment, am not going to let you decide what fear does to me. And then later with Ben, he still has to confront that fear yet again, that fear of inadequacy, that fear that he's not good enough, the fear that he is going to lose everything, which is exactly the same fear that he had in The Empire Strikes Back, right? It doesn't mean that he went backwards. It just is telling you the story that this is a continual path of life, right? And that is the story that threads throughout Star Wars. It's Ben Solo's story. It's Rey's story. It's freaking R2D2's story. Like, it's all, everybody's story centers around the idea that fear is this thing we continually have to confront. We continually have to face down. And you think about what the story that George was telling across his 6 movies, it's no coincidence that episode 1 contains that platitude of fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. So I think all of that rant to say this: fear is not something that we just confront one time and then it goes away, right? Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Destiny is not a one-time thing. If it was, we'd go to the other side, we'd go to join the force, we'd go to whatever you believe in happens after this once we confronted fear. That'd be a really sad life. It'd be a really sad existence, right? There's do you ever watch the show Shrinking?
No, but dude, it's on my list.
You
Like
need
I've
to
watched
watch it.
one episode.
So I'm gonna share a little thing, and I won't give any context, and people who have watched the show will know, and everybody else you'll be able to understand. Um, there's a scene at the end of season 3 where Harrison Ford is talking to another character, and he says essentially that the scars, the one character, the main character says, like, I've got too many scars, and Harrison Ford's character basically says, like, scars are a sign of a life well lived. What would you be without the scars? And then he encourages him in this moment, go make some new scars, right? He's telling him, go confront fear. You might fail, it might hurt, this thing might not work out for you, but you're going to be a better person for it. You're going to heal through it. And that is why I love what they do with Luke in the sequel trilogy so much is because it tells the story that you're going to continue to have these scars. But what does Luke do in the end of The Last Jedi? His arc is confronting fear yet again. What is his biggest fear? His biggest fear is that he is not going to be the legend of Luke Skywalker. He's not going to be the hero that can save Ben Solo. He was the hero that could save Anakin Skywalker. Why is he not the hero that can save Ben Solo? Him confronting fear is him saying, I recognize that I'm not that guy, and that's okay. And what Anakin doesn't realize is he's not that guy, and he's not okay with it. He's not the one that can save Padme because he's the one that's going to be her downfall.
I'm not saying that this adds to my fear argument, but it is a beautiful symbolism to what Yoda says. Let go of everything you're afraid to lose. And at the time, at the Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star, at that point, Anakin is quite literally like a robot reading a line, reading a script, passing this facade, and the lie is what Anakin had built everything around at that point. That's why it was Vader.
For sure.
Hold on. So Anakin, this is the beauty of George Lucas. Props, George, because you're speaking to me in my adult life. But like, this is the beauty of Anakin. His entire Jedi career, he's spent trying to do these acts of like love, and they come from this beautiful place. But he does do these very powerful mystical acts that people don't understand. But at the end of the day, the power wasn't about the power. The power, when he let go of everything he was afraid to lose, saving the galaxy and doing his destiny, and this is fucking beautiful to me, was as easy as picking the Emperor up and throwing him down a shaft. Think about that. Like, truly wrap your hand around the mind of Anakin Skywalker, where you have spent your entire life, because you've been put up on the pedestal as the chosen one, seeking these answers and these problems and batting your fucking brain at the universe. And you are like the chosen one, for sure. Look at what you do.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it was his choices that was the power. And I think that, for me, is what I'm trying to say to everyone here, is that what you do with your fear, how you attempt to deal with it, how you go about it. We all do have it. We have fears.
For sure.
But how you choose, by taking a second. And he does take a second. He does pause. Vader does. The fucking scene is pause. Like, I mean, he's like quite literally paused, and he got it a little too late. Like, as his son is being quite literally roasted, he is pausing, but like, he assesses the fucking situation. At the end of the day, it's this dude or my son, and my love, and that love of Padme and his children. Love outweighed fear. And at the end of the day, when you choose love, acts of goodness, kindness, and yes, I'm not saying fear doesn't exist. I'm saying as a control freak who's trying to let go of his control, that letting go of fear and trying to control every fear of my life has truly been wonderful. So I'm finding a lot of depth in that, because I think there's power to it, because there's a lot going on in our lives. I mean, there's a phone that people can always reach you. There's 6 ways. What do I always complain about? There's 6 ways to contact somebody, and the phone's always on because it's with us.
Yeah.
That's a lie. It leads to a lot of expectations. It happens very fast, and everybody's really busy. And I think a lot of people are doing their best. And I'm just not saying like you're going to go like kill a bunch of kids like this story, but like quite simply, like, if you're having a hard time and your brain is in a negative spot about these things that you just keep racking your brain around, take the lesson from Star Wars, because that's a fun place to hang out in, and learn from it and try to apply it and see how it works.
Well, and I think the beauty of it too is that Yeah, it works, but also, like you were pointing out, it doesn't take these big moments, right? The Anakin doesn't blow up the second Death Star. Anakin doesn't, do anything crazy. He just throws the Emperor down the shaft, which like is a monumental moment, but it's not a huge thing. He just chooses his son. What does Luke do? Yeah, cool. He does this great act of force projecting across the galaxy. That's really neat and really powerful. But what does he really do? He apologizes, right? Like these moments that George presented are not these huge things. The huge things are the facade. The real moment is Anakin choosing love, is Luke choosing to apologize. I know that wasn't George, but it's those things that really make the difference. And I think when fear becomes this bubble in which you become consumed, which Anakin became consumed by that bubble of fear, you start to drown in it a little bit, right? And you forget that like it took you many steps to get to that point where fear consumed you. And the steps back from that has to start with something small. It doesn't happen in one bare swoop, right? Look at the story of Ben Solo, right? The beauty of that story, of that redemption, is that like Anakin's redemption is, it's kind of hard because you can almost, if you don't look at the story close enough, you can almost feel like it was like a one-time thing where it was like, oh my god, my son's in front of me now and I'm going to choose love. You don't really think about the fact that like he saw Luke, his son, like choose to jump to his death in The Empire Strikes Back rather than join him. Like there's moments throughout there, but they really hit you over the head with it with Ben Solo, where like you think he's going to turn in The Force Awakens because Han's reaching out to him. You think he's going to turn in The Last Jedi because Leia and Rey and even Luke reach out to him, and he keeps doubling down. He keeps getting consumed by more and more fear, and it doesn't take this grand act for him to find the light again. It takes him acknowledging his fear. That's what that moment with Han is. It's why it's so important that we not misconstrue Han as a Force ghost and that they didn't make him a Force ghost. He's not a Force ghost. He's a memory in maybe presented by the Force, but he's a memory in Ben Solo's mind where he's able to confront that fear in a new way. And again, confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. And that's the beauty of a story like that, where we get to see it's not this one time thing and you don't have to get it right the first time. I think that's really super important, right? Like none of the characters we see in Star Wars get it right the first time. Anakin fucks up monumentally. That's pretty obvious. But even Luke, he fails in The Empire Strikes Back. Rey fails time and again. People want to throw that the word out there that we're not going to say on this podcast about who she is. She is not that. She fails time and again. If you really watch the sequel trilogy, Ben fails time and again. And it only takes that one decision, that one act towards believing in yourself, believing in love, believing in hope again to lead you back to that. And when Yoda is talking to Anakin in that moment in the meditation chamber and telling him, you need to let go of everything you fear to lose, again, right message, wrong time. What Anakin needed there is like, hey, you're going to be okay. Like, no matter what happens here, like, hope will still exist. We will help you through this. And that's what is going on in those stories of Luke Skywalker redeeming Anakin and the redemption of Ben Solo and all of these things. Is it somebody reaches out to them and says, you're going to be loved through this. There's going to be hope through this, right? And that, you know, is the real depth of, for example, the Leia situation in the last, or not in the Last Jedi, in the Rise of Skywalker, and obviously, like they were contained there with the loss of Carrie Fisher, but they did a really beautiful thing in that Maz says, Leia's going to have to give it all to save her son. What is all to Leia? What is the thing that keeps her moving forward? It's hope. It's love. Why is she the best Skywalker? Because she never loses hope, no matter what. Because she never stops loving, no matter what. And so that is the antithesis of, or the enemy of fear. Hope, love, empathy. Those are the things that really push fear and pop that bubble. And that, to me, that's the core story of Star Wars, right? Is that confronting fear.
But to also add to what you were saying and I'm saying is with that, it also connects another thing. Because when Luke quite literally lets go,
Mm-hmm.
he inspires an entire galaxy, quite literally, on that battlefield and lets their own fear undo them in that battle because they're shooting at nothing. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing and they're not pausing to assess that they're just shooting at Luke, buying more time for the resistance.
For sure.
So when you take the moment for what it is, and Luke wanted to inspire a galaxy, and that's what Luke does best. Like Luke didn't know it until the Last Jedi, really. But that's what Luke has always done. It's not been through like these acts of like yes, he did stop the Death Star, but like at the end, the last couple things, it's Luke putting himself out there and being willing to kind of it's not Luke's power that makes Luke great. It's Luke being Luke and Luke putting himself out there that makes Luke great. Quite
Mm-hmm.
literally in all of the best ways that Luke cuz like Luke I mean like an argument can be made that it was through Luke's actions but the force was heavily guiding him even then with the Death Star. I mean
Yeah.
he's a mouthpiece for
Luke is a conduit. Luke
inspiration.
is,
Yeah, he's a
yeah,
conduit.
for sure.
And I also I think the dark side and the lesson of Star Wars isn't the light side and dark side and balance and being even is wonderful. Um, but going down a bad path and letting your fears get the best of you and trying to control them is a path to the dark side. And this is a Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars podcast, and I think the comparison is real. And I just want I guess everyone else to see my thoughts on that and your thoughts on it because I think we get down. I think it's much easier to look at the negative sides and not trust ourselves and not lean into the people we have around us, the world we created, in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we need to trust ourselves and choose to do better and try to inspire better actions because when we get in a better headspace, I mean, you know this better than anybody. Positive mind, like staying in a positive frame of mind, helps things even in a negative
For
headspace. It
sure.
really just does.
No, for sure.
Um, and I guess I've been seeing it work a lot in my life, and I've been thinking about the philosophical side of Star Wars in that respect because it's been a while since I've really kind of thought about that.
Well, and I think too, to add on to that, like
Hope is big for you.
hope is huge for me, right? Because like the darkness, the dark side, fear, it's never going away. And that's so I think there's this broad misunderstanding with balance, and there's the camp that says like balance needs to be equal light and equal dark. Well, that's wrong because that means there's a lot of evil and wrong in the galaxy. That it, and then there's what George said about the balance of the force being like the dark side is gone, and I think people misunderstood that. What I think balance of the force really means is that the dark side is not being used to hurt people. It's not you don't have the Sith or something like that trying to bring destruction onto others. We could argue the balance of the force, and we have argued the balance of the force, and we don't need to do that in this moment. But my point here is that the dark side is never going away. Fear is never going away. What needs to happen is the other stuff needs to get bigger, right? You're always going to have fear in your life. That's the lesson of the sequels, is that fear is always going to be there. But just like Leia said, when Rey is afraid at the end of The Last Jedi, we have everything we need, right? What are you talking about, Leia? We've got a broken lightsaber, 10 people on a Millennium Falcon, and literally the last hope of the Jedi just died. What do you mean we have everything you need? We have hope, we have love, we have each other, right? And then Lando doubles down on that when he tells Poe, like, when Poe's freaking out about it, I'm not ready to do this. What does Lando tell him? We had each other. And that's the thing about fear is fear wants to isolate you. Fear wants to put you in this box and make you think you're alone. And that's what happens to Anakin is he thinks he's alone. And then Yoda communicates that in saying, like, hey, I'm not really here to listen to you, what's actually happening to you. I'm here to tell you some platitudes and something. It's so I don't want to like always be bringing it up because we of course we're doing a whole series on it on the main Clashing Saber show, but like the book that I'm writing, right? Like it's not about like,
Yep, the
hey,
book.
I'm bringing it up. It's not like you're gonna like read this book and be like, oh my god, I instantly like understand the world and have it all figured out. It's a opportunity, as with like any kind of self help book or any kind of like podcast like this. It's an opportunity for people to step into a new understanding of how this stuff works. You have to actually live it out, and that's the difference between you know a character like Luke and somebody else. Is Luke actually goes and lives it out, and that's the beauty of his story is like and his failure, and it was a failure. Like let's not, just because I love The Last Jedi does not mean that I think Luke at the beginning of The Last Jedi was right. He was clearly wrong. He even said he was wrong. That's kind of the point, right? When he takes himself out of it, when he stops participating, that's letting the fear consume him, and it's through the greatest Skywalker, Leia, that he's able to step back into that hope again. So yeah, hope is huge for me because it is the thing that gets us through fear, hope and love, and through all the darkness that I've been through in my life. And I'm sure this is not unique to just me. I'm sure so many people can go, oh yeah, I've had darkness in my life too. The things that get you through are hope and love and empathy, and those are the most powerful weapons we have against fear. It's what Anakin needed to learn, but nobody gave him hope, nobody loved him, nobody gave him empathy.
So you
Like
don't think that Obi-Wan, you don't like, because like I'm racking
Obi-Wan
my,
did not tell Anakin that he loved him until he'd cut off 3 of his limbs. Then he said, I love you. But he never said it before then. And Anakin needed to hear it. You know what I mean? Like Anakin is a very like imagine, if you will, going from Shmi Skywalker, who literally like you're an enslaved person and she's telling you you are worthwhile, worthy of love. She is the role model of like she is the stand-in for Leia there, kind of in the idea of like being full of hope and love and empathy. Imagine growing up with that for 9 years, being so covered in that when Padme says you're a slave, he goes, I'm a person and my name is Anakin. That's a statement of like, they don't get to take my personhood. That 9-year-old kids don't talk like that unless they're raised that way, unless they're raised to believe that. So you go from that level of love, that unconditional love, to going like 15, 20 years down the road before you hear somebody else who is supposed to be like family say that they love you. Like Padme says it, right? And becomes possessive because Padme becomes this. This is going to sound terrible, but Padme becomes an object to him. He becomes a goal to him, right? Oh, if I get
unknowingly,
Padme unknowingly, yeah, no,
and
he
that's
doesn't.
most of Anakin's problem is
Yeah, he doesn't.
unknowingly
It's not.
leading
I'm not
down.
saying he objectifies her, but she
Oh
becomes an
no,
object.
no.
Right? Like she becomes an object of his obsession, and that love. I really think he sees that love as conditional because by that point, by the 10 years in between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which I would love them to do more storytelling there, those 10 years I think really wore on Anakin, where he felt like I have to earn everything. Imagine going 10 years without somebody telling you you're loved. Imagine waking up every day, dude, and like your wife never tells you she loves you for 10 straight years. Like, are you going to want to stay in that relationship?
For sure.
You
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
like, I
And
mean,
that's where Anakin's at.
yeah, I still ultimately feel personally that and I'm not punishing Anakin for this. I'm saying that neutral, like literally, not like, I do feel like he could have said something to Obi-Wan. There was in
Oh,
episode
for
3,
sure.
in episode 3, they definitely go out of your way, and you can, like, George goes out of his way to show you that this is a brother relationship. They have a
Mm-hmm.
tight bond, much different from the Attack of the Clones. It is way different. And I do feel like ultimately it was a safe enough friendship to say something like that. To
For
to
sure.
tell to tell him. And I'm
Well,
not
and
putting it on Anakin. I'm saying that like on a
no,
lot
no,
of
no.
times like
Put it on Anakin.
but it's 50-50, and I think a lot of times they are 50-50. Obi-Wan should have also, yes, both are true in the sense
Both are
that
true. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the great downfall, but it also goes back to the real lesson of the entire movie. Everybody was kind of afraid to say the words love. The
Mm-hmm.
Jedi acted in love but did not have true love in their hearts, like true
Well,
communication of love. They could not communicate
unconditional
the
love. Yeah.
yeah, they could not communicate that to Anakin, but it was there. It was there. It just was not properly communicated.
For sure. And like, don't get me wrong. Like, there is a, and I know you know this, but I just want to like state this so it's clear in the discussion. Like, there is a huge difference between an explanation and an excuse. Explaining
For
why
sure.
Anakin, you know, like explaining why Anakin did what he did and what led to that is not excusing it. It's not saying it's like, I hate the argument like it's Obi-Wan's fault that Anakin fell to the dark side. It's Yoda's fault. It's the Jedi's fault. No, fuck that.
No.
It's Anakin's fault. Like Anakin, sure, like he wasn't raised after Shmi to be able to speak for his needs. He wasn't put in the proper situation. Like things would have gone different with Qui-Gon. Like we can make all those arguments, but at the end of the day, like he was a grown man who made a decision and he made the wrong one. And like he has to live with that. And he does have to live with that. And then he gets a chance in Return of the Jedi to make a different decision, right? And he makes that different decision. Same thing with Luke. Luke fell because he went through his dark times because of the legend of Luke Skywalker, because other people propped him up, because of this, that, and the other thing. At the end of the day, he was a grown man who made a decision. He's responsible for that, and he lives with the weight of that responsibility. And then he makes a different decision. And same thing with Ben Solo. It's like you can look at any character who goes and falls to the darkness and is redeemed. They don't. We're not making excuses for them, and I know you're not doing that
No,
here,
and my
but
argument is
it
everyone shit the bed. Everyone
and
shit the
literally
bed. And my
everyone did.
argument is and what I'm trying to say in this episode is that like quite literally everyone shit the bed out of fear. I can explain why, and you should not do that. And Star Wars lesson, one of the many lessons is show love, communicate your fears, and let's talk about it out of love. That is what the true lesson is, because when you look
Mm-hmm.
at it, I'm not trying to explain what Obi-Wan's fears were when I'm explaining it in this literal sense, but everyone was fearful in that situation. At some point you can break down the way Yoda was communicating, and he was afraid to do something. He was afraid to do something. Obi-Wan, when you looking at him, you know that Obi-Wan loves that kid so deeply.
For sure.
He never says it. At the end of the day, he's afraid to say the one thing that he could say that would change everything. Anakin, afraid to say the one thing that could really humanize him. Everybody is not saying it, and because Palpatine's the only one that's saying it,
Mm-hmm.
and people in your life get really good at saying the thing because your fears are pretty predictable over time. Just saying. That's all I'm
No.
saying is that like fear and the control of fear is the lesson for the podcast today. Just soak it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and it's not an easy path. It's not an easy path to walk down. It's really hard. But when you look at the characters we've talked about and you look at the struggles they go through, and then you look at you juxtapose them to characters like a Leia or something like that, like it's not saying that living in hope and love and empathy is the easy path. It's not. It's just saying like it's the path of more fulfillment. It is the destiny of a Jedi to confront fear. And that, at the end of the day, is what we're called to do. And it's what everybody failed to do. in the prequels, and Palpatine fed on that. And it is what Luke and Anakin learned to do in the original trilogy, and what the galaxy really learns to do in the sequels. That's, we can crap on the Rise of Skywalker, and we crap on the Rise of Skywalker quite a bit. But that moment of the entire galaxy showing up to confront the manifestation of fear in the Sith Order.
I think that's a good way to close it. I don't normally have that script, so I will tell them how they can find us. Huh? Lord. I don't ever do the promo, so yeah, so you can find us at our Facebook group at Clashing Sabers, and that's a really good place to start conversations. And maybe you can take some of the things that you listen here, that you have heard here, and give your feedbacks there. As far as what we do here at Clashing Sabers, we are a non for profit. And if you would like to donate to our non for profit, which all proceeds go to the non for profit, which is basically, we love to give books into schools. So if you know a teacher and want us to donate books to a teacher, send us an email at clashingsabers at gmail.com. Yep. And so you can go there to suggest a teacher for us to donate some books so that we can get books into a classroom so kids can read Star Wars books, which quite literally were what inspired me to get into the deeper universe of Star Wars. I did not, but thank you. Yep. Well, with that being said, may the force be with you.